which means we're live, of course. All right, so I'm going to close my Unit 7 index page because I don't need that right now. I'm just going to focus on the page that I currently have open, which is my 7.3 HTML. Let's start this like we normally do, HTML5. And then I'm not going to put anything in the body yet because 7.3 is almost entirely in JavaScript. Style sheets are optional. You don't need a style sheet for 7.3, but I'm going to make one just so that I have that Zelda link practice. Right after I give my document a title, B. Blakeney P1 7.3. Okay, then I'm going to right click on my style subfolder and go new file. I'm going to go a little bit faster since this is stuff we've been doing. Style.css. So I have my 7.3 style.css. And the more important folder or the more important file that you need to attach this time is a 7.3 JS script. So I'm going to right click on my script subfolder and go new file and then type out 7.3 JS or .js. There we go, .js. And then it should get in line with the other JavaScripts. Okay, so you should be looking at VS Code with 3 tabs, one of each type of file, or at least these 2 tabs if you decided not to make a style sheet. Because remember, the style sheet is optional on 7.3. You should have at least a 7.3 JavaScript and an index 7.3.html. So with this assignment, going back to the HTML page, we're going to link the JavaScript inside of the brain instead of inside of the body, like we have been doing so far. So I'm going to put my script src. You want that second option. You could type it out the long way, but save yourself some time, be an efficient coder, and get that script src. And then inside of here, this is where we're going to attach our 7.3 JS. So start with the subfolder that it lives in, which is scripts, and then 7.3 JS right here. Scripts do not need content in between their start and end tags, even though all of the other tags in the brain are void tags. They don't need an end. Script is not a void tag, but it does not need content in order for it to be functional. Kind of one of those outliers in that sense. If you chose to do a style sheet, this is where you'll do your Zelda link, LINK, and then hit enter. That's going to give you REL style sheet and href. Same process as the JavaScript subfolder, then file. And then after the file, you put type equals text/CSS, the same way we've been doing it since Unit 4, I think. This is another optional part. The link and the version are both optional, but I like to put a version number in my web pages and my files so that when I go back and update it, I can update a change log or I can just kind of tell what draft I'm on. But to do that really quick, you just type V1 in the brain and then control question mark will quickly comment that out so that you have a V1 looking like this. So I'm going to leave this up for a second so you can check yours against mine. I'm going to take attendance real quick. I'm pretty sure everybody's here. Yeah, pretty much. Okay. Except Shreya's not here right now. Okay. So now we're going to make our way to the JavaScript file, the JS over here. And we're going to start leaving some notes before we do any type of JavaScripting, because we want to label before we start doing our actual programming so we can figure out what to come back to later. Okay, so arrays, you might have heard that term in math. It functions pretty similarly in JavaScript. Arrays are a way to store a variety of numbers in a specific position in their sequential order. Now, that might not make sense when I say it, but it'll make more sense when I type it out. So when you're doing the first type of array called a number array, I want you to type out the word numbers and then comment that out, control question mark, and then hit enter, because this is where we're going to configure our number array. With a number array, we've used the term VAR, if you remember back to early JavaScript, VAR to declare a variable. That's kind of an old way to do it that older computer systems like. It works in the new age, but it's not. There's other ways to do it, which is what we're going to start with let instead here. So instead of typing variable to declare our variable, we're going to type out let and then give an array a name the same way that we give functions a name. You can see it's kind of the same colors. Let is that Gene kind of denim blue, and numbers is kind of the name. It doesn't have the parentheses, which would turn it into a function, but we're going to say let numbers space equals space, and then a pair of square brackets, okay? Arrays require square brackets. So I'm going to type that out as a note right here. Arrays require square brackets and always start at 0, which will make sense here in just a second. Yes. I haven't yet. That's what we're doing right now. Okay. So I'm going to comment that out so that you have a note for that later on. Arrays always require square brackets and always start at 0. So to actually set our array, you can put whatever numbers you want in here. But for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to count from 5 down to 0. So not separated by spaces, no quotation marks needed. You only need commas. I'm going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Kind of. Oh, these are periods. I missed. So make sure these are commas, not periods. Okay. So I've declared my array. I've told JavaScript that let numbers be this set of numbers down to 0. I have 6 numerals here, right? Because 0 is technically a numeral in JavaScript. And each of these numbers are in a specific position in this array. It's kind of like, it is kind of like lists in a little bit, in a way. So what we'll do in order to call this array back, because remember JavaScript's basic process is giving the computer information is the first half, declaring your variables, creating your condition. The second half is executing something, running some type of program. We've done the first half, now we need to do the second half. So when you want to call back data from an array that you've configured in whatever way you want to do it, I'm going to use console log for this example. So console log parentheses. This is where you put the array name, and then inside of a pair of square brackets, still contained within the, ignore that that's crossed out, that's just JavaScript helping me out. The array name, and inside of the square brackets, you put the array, the position of the number that you're trying to call back. So what does that actually look like in our example here? Our array is called numbers because that's what we've declared it as. We've let numbers equal to this array. So in our console log, you type numbers, and then square brackets. And inside of these square brackets, you put one of these positions on the numbers here. So the reason I say that arrays always start at 0 is that the 0th position is right here, this number 5. And then it counts up however many variables or however many numerals you have in your total array. So this is 0, position 1, position 2, position 3, position 4, position 5. Right? If I counted that right. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, cool. So whatever number I put in here is going to reference the position in the array, not the actual variable as contained inside of the square brackets. So if I put array position number 5, Control S to save this, and then I go back to my index page and run it, we check out the console, it's going to display the problem, or it's going to display in my debug console the output of 0. So even though I said log numbers 5, I'm not literally logging the number 5. I'm logging the 5th position in the array, which is actually 0. And you can see that in your output by right-clicking and going to inspect, or yeah, it's usually called inspect, down towards the bottom here. We're going to find our way to the console. It decided to use Edge, so it's usually this little box with the arrow on it, and you can see that 0 is being logged in the console on line number 4 of our 7.3 JS file. This is a numeric array. Very simply configured, functional, excuse me. Once you get out of the basics of JavaScript, arrays are really useful ways to keep all of your data in one spot and call it back when you need specific conditions met. Another type of array, I'm going to close my debug here so that I have the max amount of screen space. Another type of array is called a string. So you can type / string, or you can type the word string and quick comment it out. But string arrays are data storage that is not just a hard numeric value. Like 5 is 5. There's not really any debating that there. String lets you to be a little bit more subjective and set things to different types of data. So we're going to type let again, and then I'm going to use fruits as an example. So let fruits, or whatever you want your string array to be, If you want to just copy mine, that's fine too. Equals space equals, and then a square bracket. Now inside of these square brackets, this is where we declare our string of variables. It's called a string because it goes in order, just like the numbers do, but they're not numbers, if that makes sense. So each variable that I'm going to assign to fruits, if you guys want to give me some fruits, I will put them in our array here. Bananas.
Watermelon.
Watermelon.
Coconut.
So you notice that each of them is contained within a pair of quotation marks and separated by a comma. So I heard coconut. What else you guys got? What other fruits do you know of?
Mellow.
Mellow. How do you spell that? Pomelo? I've never heard of that one. Like that?
Honestly, I have no idea. I don't think there's an L at the beginning, but.
We'll call it pomelo. Okay, that's fine. It's a data store. It's a data type.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm gonna add peaches because those are my favorite right now.
That's a good one.
Okay, these can be whatever you want.
Avocado.
As long as the string, I don't know if avocado's a fruit. As long as the string variables are separated by both quotation marks and commas, it will be stored as data inside of your array. Now the positioning is exactly the same as the numbers. Bananas are in position 0, watermelon's in position 1, 2, 3, 4 total for this one. Let's do 5 on the other one as well. We'll go cherries was a popular one in the other classes. Okay, and cherries. I'm gonna close my Explorer so you can see my whole string here. Okay, so we're gonna do some more console logs. And then in the parentheses here, you could go array name and then array position. So you would go fruits, square bracket position 0, which will give me bananas. Or you can do it all. You could do it line by line like this if you wanted to log every single one of them in its own console log. But you could also just type the array position or the array name and the array position, fruits, square bracket 1, comma, fruits, square bracket 2, etc., up until it's all contained within the log here. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 options. So I'm gonna log those out real quick. So fruits 3, just declaring the array and then declaring the position, or calling the array and saying what specific position I want to reference. Fruits 4, fruits 5. Okay, cool. So now I have console logged all of my fruits in this string, and I can mess with this order here. Say I want position 3 here, so that means this makes this position 1, and I want this to be position 5, which makes this position 2. We'll leave, let's take 4. I'm just kidding, I put 4 up here in 0. You can mix up the position that you call it back, and it's just going to take it out of whatever order you've stored here. So if I go back to my index page and I run this, nothing on the actual display, but if I right click and inspect, it's going to log, and I go to the console, of course, it's going to log all of those specific positions in a single line because it's one single console log, but it's going to put them in the order that I set. So if let me split my screen. Okay, go back to my JavaScript. All of this is in one console log. So fruit number 3, 5, 1, 0, and 2 is going to happen in this order. If you want to separate them, you have to do a new console log. So let's take fruits 2 out of here. Control X, and then hit enter. I'm going to do a new console.log, curly bracket, Control V, or not curly bracket, sorry, parentheses. Refresh that. It's going to take coconut out of that original string console and put it down here in the new one from line 10. Remember, the console is going to tell you what line that the JavaScript is being executed off of. So 0 is on line 4 here. That's our console log of numbers. All right. This is line 9, so it's breaking down that console log. If you're finding things that you're not sure where they're happening, check the position, kind of like the bookmark on the inspector here on the console. So these are the basics of arrays. You can see that it's a way to store multiple different types of data. Well, it's one type of data, but the same, you can store multiple variables in one specific spot, in one specific name that you can call back with more ease later on. So another way that you can use arrays, the typical use case of setting an array is something called a loop. So a loop is a function that is going to behave until its conditions are met, and then it's gonna stop. So what we're gonna do here is give it an array to work with that once it runs out of information, it's going to stop running. So what we need to do before we do anything like that is leave a comment for ourselves in the future. Loop array for numbers is what we're going to configure right now. Highlight that, control question mark. All right, so we need to set our variables before we declare them, before we do any type of functioning yet. So we're going to go let numbers equal, and I'm going to count up from 0 to 10 this time. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. But you can see JavaScript's kind of mad at me. It's turned red. It's gone evil, or eviler than it already is. You cannot have two of the same lets be true at the same time. So we already have let numbers equal to these 5 digits. We cannot reset numbers equal to a new set of 10 digits later on, like you can in CSS. So like with CSS, because this is the newer quote unquote, the most recent addition to our code, it should overwrite the previous. JavaScript does not work like that. You have to have unique variables or unique names for your functions and for your loops. Otherwise, it will not work. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna change numbers on line number 13 for me to numbers. So you can have a 0 or a 1. I mean, not a 1, an O, the letter O.
You can also make you like capital.
Yeah, you can change the capitalization as well. But I like numbers because it looks very different from numbers. So then I'm going to go to my comment on line 12 and change the U to a 0 so that it matches. So here's our loop array for numbers. Okay, so we've set numbers to equal 0 to 10. What we're going to do now is create something called a for loop. For loops have a specific type of, or a specific set of variables and conditions that go inside of them. And I want you guys just to copy this for now, and I'll explain it so that it makes more sense later on if you're watching tutorials or reading tutorials. I forgot, I guess they're called the same thing. Anyway, sorry. So inside of our parentheses, after you write the word for, you're going to write let equal or space I equals 0, like this. So let I equal to 0, we're setting another variable that's contingent upon this loop, or dependent upon this loop, I mean. Separate that with a semicolon and then a space. Then we're going to set I to less than the length of numbers. So we're going to go name of the array, numbers.length. The .length property, when you add it to an array, is going to find out how many variables there are in the array, not necessarily their sum or what they actually are, but just how many spaces there are inside of the declared loop. And then what we do next is take I and add 1 to it by adding this plus plus. You can hit tab and leave a label that's called code to execute for each iteration. So that word iteration, each, means like round or attempt. So I'm going to control question mark that. Notice in JavaScript you can nest your comments at different layers or different levels. Can't do that in HTML and CSS. So you can move your comments around so that they make more sense to more specific spots in the page here. All right, so now the code to actually execute each of these iterations, to actually run this loop until it becomes false, is just another console.log. And then we're going to set the variable or the array, which in my case is numbers, in here to the value of I. So now what we're doing, we're getting into some algebraic expressions here with variables and stuff like that. I'll break down what the computer is interpreting what we've just told it to do. So we've given it the information that the variable of numbers is these numbers in these positions. So the 0th position, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, all the way up to 10, right? Now it's going to run a loop based on the information that we've given it. And we have I equal to 0. So when I is less than the length of numbers, which would be up to 10, add 1 number to I. So what it goes here is going to count up from 0 up to the max length of the array, which is 10. And it's going to log those based on the numbers array and the variable of I. So. If it doesn't make sense to you, don't worry, it barely makes sense to me. So,
Wait,
good, yeah,
Can I like try to explain?
yeah, absolutely.
So like, wait. It doesn't here. Okay, so it starts from 0.
Mhm.
So like I is the index, right?
Mhm.
So I starts with 0 and it ends when it's like. And like the length is like it stands for the length of like the whole list. And
Yes,
like so I starts with 0, so it starts with the first digit of the array.
Mhm.
And then like as I adds 1 unto itself, it like jumps to the next index, like next index number. And
Correct.
it reaches the end.
Yes, until it runs out of length. Yeah.
So the way it works, first thing, set the variable,
Mhm.
when you first run the loop, it runs the first thing.
So that runs I,
Yeah, the middle is a boolean that as
it
long
looks
as
through, yeah.
as long as it is true, it will run. And the last thing, every single time you run the loop, it'll run that code.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be I plus plus, it could be I plus Q,
Yeah.
whatever.
It can be whatever second variable you want here. Cool, and then it just logs that function that we've created here. Tom, you had your hand up? No? God. Okay, so this is really fascinating code that when we run it, it's gonna do something you've never seen before, which is count up from 0 to 10. Hooray, we've got 0 to 10. Our function is functional. Our array has been called, our variable's stored. And that's really all you need for 7.3. So what you can do is you can add, if we go back real quick to the fruits array, we can add another console.log. That's going to demonstrate that length function. Console.log, and then a parentheses and some quotes. Anytime you have quotes inside of a console log, it means it's going to make text appear, like legible text for your user or for your developer. So we're going to say the length of the fruits array is, and then a semicolon, because JavaScript's not going to interpret this space as a space that we use when writing. So you need a semicolon to create a little bit of distance between those two things. And now after you finish the quotes, you write the name of the array and then the function dot length, not the function, but the, oh my hiccups. Oh my goodness, why is it mad at fruits?
Second clock.
It should, wait, this worked before.
No, you need a clock.
You probably need to like.
Plus
click-
one? Like that?
Yeah, there.
It's gonna, oh, okay, it's gonna add. Okay, weird, it didn't need that last time. All right, so let's run this or refresh it because I'm already running and go back to Edge. And it's gonna say right here, the length of the fruits array is 6.
Why is it up?
There's still no space.
Why is it okay?
So we gotta add the space before the quotes in order for them to appear inside of the inspector like we're used to. The length of the fruits array is 6. It's a pretty basic breakdown. There's not a lot of like functionality that we can call upon this yet. It's just important to know how to set these up and use them later on, because as you get deeper and deeper into JavaScript, it's dependent on storing a lot of different data types and a lot of different variables all in one spot. And you call them based on specific conditions or specific things that you're trying to do. But if you're just focused on getting what I'm asking for the assignment, this is what your JavaScript should look like. Okay? Does this make sense? Even a little bit? I was never very good at math, so this is a struggle for me, to be honest. Programming is quite a bit different from HTML and CSS because those things are static, right? They don't need dependencies in the sense that they need variables, things are actually happening. Those are just recipes. This is actually instructions. There's a weird little difference, but if you're feeling stressed out by JavaScript, don't please, because this is the last thing that we're doing officially as a class before we get into final time. I need to develop my JavaScript skills a little bit more. Okay, does anybody have any questions before I check your 7.3s? Are we good here? Your index should just look like this. It should have nothing in the body. I mean, unless you really want to put something there, because everything's contained within the console. So you don't need to have anything in the body. All right, if we're all good, I'm gonna wrap up the Zoom. I'll check these for about 5 minutes and then I'll talk to you guys. Oh, there was another thing I wanted to show you. I need to add it to your agenda for this week, but let me pull up second periods as an example. Give me just a second. And then we'll just do a couple little housekeeping things before we get into final time. Okay, so if we go to second period, I've added a couple links here for JavaScript games and challenges that are going to be a lot more fun to practice than doing stuff like this, right? Things that are a little bit boring, but strictly functional. Those JavaScript games and challenges sometimes do not have the best tutorials or the best walkthroughs on them, but they are a way to see these JavaScript functions in action. Let's look at Code Combat, for example. What you do with Code Combat is you just do I'm a student and then you click play now. We don't have a class code or anything. I'm going to mute this because it makes noise. This is like a dungeon crawler that attempts to teach you JavaScript, and it's will let you let you practice JavaScript with stuff like variables, forms, and functions, and it's going to get more intense the more you progress through. So I already have started, so it'll ask you to like equip some stuff or whatever. Okay, it's going to load in. Your goals are to avoid the spikes and to collect the gems. So guide your hero by writing a program with code. When you click on start level, because I've already written some, it's going to have little tooltips. If you hover over your options here, like if I click move down, it's gonna break down how you move your hero down. So in this case, the parameters are going to be steps, and then the number, and then how many steps are going to be taken, right? So if I click on, okay, so that's move right. If I hit enter, and then I type, if I hover over this, hero.move down, and then a step count. So hero.move down, and then I need to count, let's see, that's probably 2 steps. Okay, and let's run that. Okay, and then we're just gonna go hero.move right, and I'll attach these to your guys' agenda here.
Programming language Python.
It's
a programming language Python.
That's it.
Yeah.
Where?
Right, top right.
Oh, well, this is supposed to be JavaScript. What?
I mean, that's where also working top there.
Yeah. Python and JavaScript are really similar. Okay, yes. So it's just working through the basic syntax and stuff we've been practicing. And it's a little bit more fun than listening to me talk about arrays. There's also a couple other options like Code Wars and Leaked Code, which I'll attach here in a second. JavaScript.info is not a game necessarily, but it is a super helpful reference document for how to break down JavaScript into its kind of key components and how you can improve your skills through there. We got objects, data types, functions, properties, configurations. This is all just really useful tools to have on your in your back pocket for.
Yeah, and then
Anyway, so let me attach this for you guys because this is really only on second periods currently. And then tomorrow we will, so we have 10 minutes left here. Tomorrow we're going to talk about making a GitHub account if you don't already have one. It's really simple, but it's important for hosting your sites. And then we're going to start talking about what I'm asking of your final. So I'm giving you guys lots of time to work on your final, all of next week, and then all of finals week. So there will be no excuses for not finishing your final because you will have plenty of time and plenty of help from me because I don't like tests. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up real quick.